expect major upheavals.
How do we help people get past the mental and emotional aspect of a complete change in our identity as a human?
The level of ability for an AI model to follow instructions and take consistent action, probably 2 years.
Customer service roles are going to be gone 5 years from now.
None of us know exactly when it's going to happen, but I feel reasonably confident. Me personally, I'm saying, I feel reasonably confident everybody on the show will experience it. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is June 24th, 2024, and you're watching the Daily AI Show live. And today we're talking about, I don't know, sort of a fun topic, which is, or maybe not so fun. It's what happens after AGI? What happens after, artificial superintelligence, ASI? Our AGI is artificial general intelligence. That's this concept, if you will, of when AI gets to a point that it's easily able to replicate, replace what humans do. Of course, there's a bigger conversation here that we may not necessarily touch on, which is like AGI might be industry specific, but we're going to stay a little bit more broad. We're going to stay up in the clouds a little bit more in today's conversation, because it really is about, what happens to society. Now, we can talk, Eran, you're the one that brought this up, so we'll talk about it. But we can talk about universal basic income. Is that part of a solution? Could it be part of a solution? Be interesting to talk about that. But also talking about shifts in social dynamics. How does society adjust when maybe there's not as much work? Does that open up opportunities for entrepreneurship? How do things do? How do people shift their job roles and what their expertise are and all of these things? So today we have Beth, Jyunmi, Eran, Andy, and I'm Brian. And Eran, you were the one that sort of threw this into. So quick background, we have a show idea Slack channel. And that is exactly where these ideas for these shows come from. And they come from all different sources. Beth, a lot of times you'll share stuff from Twitter. Jyunmi, you'll share stuff that a lot of times that maybe is like film related, but from other areas, you'll be like, this is really, really interesting or whatever. Andy, same thing. So in this particular case, Eran, you're like, hey, I don't know if we've necessarily talked about this recently. And also it's just sort of a interesting conversation. So would love to just sort of kick it off with your thoughts on this one, and maybe what motivated you to like throw that in the channel, and where you were when you were thinking like, hey, I think this is something we definitely want to dive into on the show.
So I don't remember exactly what it was that inspired me to do something, but I basically just threw the topic into ChatGPT to see what it came up with, which gave some interesting ideas. But it's a topic I've thought about a fair bit, and we could easily talk for a week about the subject. But I guess the thing I want to say first and foremost is that none of us have a working, accurate crystal ball. So what we think might happen could be completely and utterly wrong. So, even I can't look 5 years ahead with any sort of huge degree of accuracy and tell you what I think is going to happen, because we just don't know. So, on the one side, you've got the Terminator story, Skynet takes over the world and the AI robots come out and kill us all. We've got that option. And then we've got the other option, which is AI makes it a wonderful world where we all don't have to work and everyone, we don't need money, kind of the Star Trek space communism or space socialism, depending on what you want to call it, where we all live lives of luxury and blah, blah, blah. So who knows? But I think it's definitely a case that a lot of, and we've talked about this, what are we, 230 shows in now? There's a lot of opportunity for AI to impact jobs in terms of, in some cases, making jobs go away. So I'm in the marketing space, for example, and AI is absolutely impacting my line of work for the better and for the worse, depending on where you sit. It's definitely making massive changes that I never thought 2 years ago, I never thought we would see. So as we start to move into other fields, like things like business or finance or medical or whatever, it's absolutely going to impact things. So we're in a position where if we get true AGI, where it's good enough to kind of do, one AI system could kind of do the job of, 2 or 3 or 10 or whatever number of people. How do we deal with the fact that people may not have a job? what happens we're in a world where there's no way to earn an income for a lot of people? Do we just let it turn into some dystopian, horrible future where you've got the haves and the have-nots? And there's been plenty of sci-fi movies that have been put out about that kind of storyline. Or do we take a good path where we start to say, okay, well, maybe it's time to get serious about, making sure that everybody gets a great opportunity. And I don't know where it's going to go, but it's definitely an interesting perspective. Fingers crossed, I would like to think we go in a good path, but I'm also a little bit cynical because I see that a lot of people just say, hey, excuse my French, I'm going to swear, I don't give a shit about you. All I'm worried about is me. And when we have enough of that, then we have real issues. So where this is going to go, I honestly don't know.
So I'd like to take just one quick step back and say that AGI is not defined, right? All of the top labs are shooting for it. All of them have different definitions. And one of the reasons that it was important originally was that OpenAI's original charter was that it would do a bunch of research and build the levels up until it reaches AGI. And when it reaches it, and so Microsoft's investment, they get like first access, they get to see all of the data. Once it reaches AGI, that's released to the public for the good of all. Okay? So now that that's not a pipe dream, they had no idea that this was going to work or that it was going to work as quickly as it did. For them was slow, right? I mean, it didn't, they've been doing it long before ChatGPT was released upon the world to change it. But that's a big point in this. So we're talking about what happens after AGI. But AGI may not happen excellent. We hit AGI today, right? Announcement, everybody, we're at AGI. Now let's talk about what's happening.
And now even, Sam Altman has said just that, right, Beth, which is that he no longer believes it is some snap of the finger of like, here it is, it exists, that it probably will be slow and people may not necessarily notice that it's happening. And it will probably happen in smaller subsets of industries and stuff like that, where we might look at a medical, or we might look at a certain technology and go, oh, that is AGI, general intelligence in that industry, which is sort of like it's general, but also in a niche. But I think there's a much more likely that we will see that in marketing or something like that, where sort of the collective knowledge or consensus, I guess it would be, is, yeah, at this point, we collectively agree, whoever we is, that AGI or AI is now able to do the vast majority of the work that used to be done by humans in this area. And then, there might be huge advances for several years in one area where people sort of point to it as the example and go, this is what we think is going to happen everywhere else. So I just wanted to kind of add on to that. And also, as I mentioned the other day, last Thursday, when we were talking about Leopold's situational awareness paper, he really opened my eyes to the fact that AGI is not the end either. There's artificial superintelligence, ASI, which is a higher order, if you will. And that comes with a whole lot of other stuff. So, you said it yourself, Eran, we're on a path. None of us have a crystal ball. None of us know exactly when it's going to happen, but I feel reasonably confident. Me personally, I'm saying I feel reasonably confident everybody on this show will experience it.
I agree that I don't think I think most of us, unless we drop dead by accident, will experience some aspect of it in the next, say, 5 to 10 years. So I'm not planning to die that quickly, and I'm sure none of you are. So we're probably all going to live through something of that respect. Sorry, Andy, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No problem. My personal definition of the inflection point where advancing artificial intelligence really has the largest impact on the workforce is that point where general intelligence, meaning I take a general purpose AI, it doesn't when it comes out of the box to me, it doesn't necessarily have the expertise in this unique area that I needed to apply itself to. But literally within seconds, I can give it general instructions to learn everything it needs to know about that, and then, in effect, impersonate a human remote worker who is an expert at the highest levels of achievement in that particular discipline. And that's general intelligence, meaning, okay, it knows how to think, plan, execute its own work to inform itself so fully that it's now equivalent as a knowledge worker alongside someone like me who's worked in the knowledge workspace for 20 years, 30 years, whatever. That's the point where it doesn't seem to me probable that knowledge workers, distinct from blue collar work where, wrenches and hammers have to be wielded. And I'm less worried about the economic and sort of social impacts of robotics entering into the marketplace. I think that there's going to be needs for a longer period of time for blue collar types of work, working the energy grid and all that sort of thing. These people are out in the middle of the night correcting the damage from global climate change and so on. Knowledge work, however, I think is going to be substantially replaced by AI. And that's going to happen faster at the point in time where general purpose artificial intelligence can take over any knowledge work that you can now imagine being done by something that looks like me right now on this video stream and can answer any question and give you guidance and direction about whatever it is that you want to accomplish as a knowledge working team. That's where it all happens. And I'm really, really cynical about the implications of there being new kinds of work that emerge for humans. Because when I look at all of the different functions within a company, very few of them actually require a human in person interacting with other persons in order to get the productivity gains out of that particular function. So, when you ask the question, well, what are going to be the new jobs that come around because of AGI? The top one there that's listed is AI systems development. We're going to need people who can design, develop, and maintain these artificial intelligence systems. Yes, AI can do that much better than that. So, and you go down the whole list, and all of the things that are proposed as new jobs, I think, can be replaced by AI. So I think we're in for a very disruptive decade because it's happening now, right? Customer service roles are going to be gone 5 years from now. They're all going to be occupied. Anytime you call up the customer support department, anytime you text it, anytime you email it, all of that is going to be handled by AI. Right now, it's hard to get a live person on the phone, right? Eventually, they'll be unnecessary. The solutions will be there for you.
So I just want to do a quick pushback, and this is only specifically, Andy, to what you were talking about blue collar, but I'm going to follow this up by saying here comes a firefighter story. So I'm going to put them together, pushback followed by firefighter. No, my only reason for this is that, I'm just curious. I agree with you. Your marketing, your white collar, your customer service, these I do believe are more squarely in the crosshairs of AI and what might come after that. But also we can assume, even though a robot firefighter per se aren't going to replace 15 firefighters, there's like 15 of us in the one station I was in when I was a rookie. And it's not going to replace all of them or fire trucks, but AI will absolutely, it already is, with heads-up displays and things like that, infiltrate that very manual job. What I would imagine is, just like in firefighting, is that there will be increasingly more and more ways, and it will speed up rapidly. Like the rate of new technologies and deployment of them into the workforce, I think will be much quicker. It's going to be super rapid here in the next decade. And the reason I mentioned firefighting is just to say, use any example you want, but right now, today, we still send human beings into burning buildings. That's ridiculous. When we do it all the time, and you can insert all the time, but that's still a thing. But the people before me also rode and hung onto the back of the truck and held onto it with their hand. That didn't exist when I became a firefighter. They also sat outside in the rain, and the captains wouldn't even look back at them when it was pouring because they didn't want to see the poor schlubs who were getting doused on the back of the truck. I was in a closed-in cab. we had heat sensors, we had stuff like that. So I just bring it up as an example of, I think you're right, Andy. Obviously, I agree with you. The only pushback I would say is also, though, I think we will see huge disruptions on the blue collar side where AI has become a tool. It is a tool that could disrupt how many people are necessary to do a particular job. Do I still need 15 firefighters to manage a small fire, or can I now do it with 5+ technology, drone work, AI, being able to see through walls, whatever the case is, robots that can withstand high heat and drag people out of a building faster and safer than putting another human in there to go retrieve them, because that's the main thing people would go into a building for, was to protect life. Well, do we need to do that anymore? Or can I put a Boston Dynamics robot that can withstand 1,000 degrees or more, who can go find and retrieve that human and have a higher, degree of likelihood that they'll survive? I don't know. I'm just saying, I think there's a lot of disruption there as well. That's all.
Can I throw in a quick point? So I agree with what you just said there. I think that it is going to be some of the blue collar stuff, and I want to give you two rather weirdly opposing examples. One of which is actually not really blue collar, but one example is the fast food industry. So I don't know what it's like in America, but if you go to a McDonald's in Australia, nowadays the primary way in which people order their meal is they either can order from a terminal, a big touchscreen terminal, and they push the order through and it gets sent to the kitchen and somebody sings out order 54 and you go and pick it up, or you can order it from your app and then go and pick it up. I can very easily see where at some stage the kitchen will be completely automated, whether it's Boston Dynamics robots or whatever, it doesn't matter. I can absolutely see that. You won't need people manning the stores because there will be no manning or womaning. There'll be just robots, and you'll order everything from your phone or something like that. So that's one example of a very common and simple blue collar environment that's going to be impacted it. And then another one, which is, it's probably actually not really blue collar, but it's definitely it's one I'm personally interested in. The military space, there is currently a program in place between DARPA and the US Air Force to develop a fighter jet that can have an AI control the fighter jet to do all the dogfighting stuff that normally you'd have to put a human in, and that is in training now. And in a couple of years, whether it's 1 or 5, I don't know, we are going to see, multi-million-dollar fighter jets, $100 million or more, that are going to be AI controlled. Once we get past that, well, we don't know whether we can trust the AI or not, because you don't have a human, a meat sack in the seat that can't handle more than 9 Gs in a turn for more than 5 or 10 seconds. You've got an AI system that can do 9 Gs all day long, no problems, completely changes the dynamic. So there's two really disparate industries, blue and or white collar, that are absolutely going to be impacted by AI. And I think robotics has obviously got a big part in this as well. So anyway, sorry.
So let me provide my counterpoint to that, which is, yes, blue collar will be affected by the advent of machines that are being added to that role. But compare the capital investment required to replace something like a firefighter or a jet fighter pilot compared to a customer support specialist, right? There's no comparison. So it's knowledge work that is so easily disintermediated. And the blue collar work where you actually have to have a physical thing going in there. And here's an example. Imagine that time. How long does it take? So I think we all agree that both sides, white collar and blue collar, are going to be impacted. But I think it's going to take much longer on the blue collar side than it does on the white collar side. The white collar side is going to play out, I think, over the next 5 years. That's a very short time frame for the substantial portion of the population that's currently being employed and supported economically by our system to be disrupted. On the blue collar side, let's take the example of a firefighter who is called out not on a fire, but on a car crash. Okay, we've had for some time a machine, the jaws of life, that can rip open a car, but it's being guided by a human. How long will it take us to develop a Boston Dynamics robot that can get to the scene, figure out exactly what's going on inside and outside, and then change this situation with, teamwork with, other robots so that we don't really need firefighters to respond to car crashes anymore. And it can call for helicopters. The capital requirements to do that kind of disruption are enormous. And so humans are going to be involved in those things. Or the other example that comes to mind is when the power goes out, like here in California, Pacific Gas and Electric has fleets of trucks driven by humans that are ready to go out to the various locations and first of all, try to figure out what's going on there and what will be required to repair it and call on those things. The capital investment PG&E has to make in order to make that a replacement of humans is long and hard. That's going to be enormous.
Well, first of all, Karl's here, Jyunmi. I want to get everybody's opinion on this and maybe just pivot a little bit because we've talked a little bit obviously about technology and where it might affect. But I'm curious to get your guys, because this is something that when you put in the comments, Eran, something that hit me, which was reimagining purpose and identity, exploring the philosophical implications of AGI on human purpose and identity, and how you redefine success. So I just want to bring up a personal, like what would be personal to me. I'm going to use my dad as an example. My dad started blue collar in the 60s with TWA. If you don't know, that was an airline that out of JFK, New York, and ultimately went defunct. But he was there, worked for a year for Western Airlines. A year later, our family moved from California to Georgia because Western was bought out by Delta Airlines. And my dad actually had to take, professionally steps backwards because sometimes this happens when big companies merge and all that. And so my dad actually had to step backwards to go forward. I say all that to say when my dad retired in 2005, he was, I would say, the top 20. He was in the top 20 of Delta Airlines worldwide. He was a vice president of all worldwide based aircraft-based maintenance. So I say that to say that my dad is a huge success story in terms of where he started as a mechanic, blue collar to white collar, and where he retired from. And I'm always very, very proud of him. But I bring him up because my dad put 30 plus years into aviation. I know how much his success is tied to his personality. And I'm not singling him out. I'd say that if he was sitting here too. I know so many people like that who part of their identity is how successful they are at their job because of what they've been able to achieve, because they're proud of it, as they should be, because of the skills they're able to do. And I'm just curious what you guys think. If we get to this level in the next decade, 2 decades, what does it matter? Regardless, we're moving in that direction. It doesn't really matter how long it takes there. How do we deal with that, with re-identifying purpose? Because I know for me too, I get wrapped up into what I can do as far as my business, whatever that might be. And that's part of me. And if that goes away, if somebody says, whoop, we don't need you and your expertise to do that. Are we looking at increases? Do we need to have more into mental health? Are we looking at higher suicide rates as people cannot adjust to the idea that their identity, which has been tied to their job for maybe 20, 30 years or more or less, is now going away. And society is essentially saying, thank you, but we don't need you in that way anymore. I mean, that seriously scares me. It seriously scares me.
I agree. I think that's a huge thing, Brian. And that's probably I think that's the biggest issue we might have to deal with at the end of the day. It's not how do we make sure that we perhaps get people money, as how do we help people get past the mental and emotional aspect of a complete change in our identity as a human, which for most of us is tied up in our job. It's massive. That's the big one that worries me more than anything.
What do the rest of you guys think?
There's so kind of on a little bit of a side note here. I don't know if anyone saw what Mustafa Suleiman it was a post yesterday that he said that, he was referencing something around GPT-6, but he was more mentioning how the level of ability for an AI model to follow instructions and take consistent action probably won't be around, or probably 2 years. That's his take. Could be sooner. Who knows, whatever the models are going to get faster or slower, but 2 years. Now it's like, oh, that's not a long time away. It's like, no, that's not a very long time away. That's a quick for those outside the X bubble who want every single model within the next week. Everybody else, 2 weeks, 2 years it goes by pretty quick. And it's fascinating to see what that looks like. Because I'm going to pair that with somebody posted in the AI exchange saying, oh, the breakup, how AI bubble will burst. We've seen a lot of these articles, but I think that there's a really key one in there where it says, Sam Altman meet Frank. Frank is a bloated, angry, territorial upper middle manager who controls a $5 billion business, filing cabinet, fax machine. He's been doing it this way since the Clinton administration. Sounds like my dad. This Frank is in every bank, law firm, consulting, insurer, drill miner, whatever. Frank is the user interface of your banking app, is indecipherable. I don't know. Frank is why it takes time, money, and expense to file an insurance claim today than it did in 1997. It's why banks still have job postings for COBOL developers. Frank is also why incredibly tech talent never stays at huge banks. For every 4 AI experts that the biggest banks have hired over the past 2 years, they've lost 5. So I think we kind of know what that Frank or whoever that person embodies in all these organizations. And, this person says because of that Frank, there's only so much technology that a company, large companies, can actually be able to ingest. And I'm seeing that too, because no matter how fast, we've just saw 3.5 Sonnet, everybody's jumping on that. But we also saw the routers report where no one even knows who Anthropic is, right? Everyone's like, oh, Sonnet beat ChatGPT. No, it didn't. ChatGPT will be in the space because no one understands because of just how fast it's going. What's interesting is what Mustafa Suleyman said in terms of 2 years, where if you give an AI instructions, he says, especially in novel ways, it'll be able to complete the task. I think about like what that implication means for every single, you would quote unquote white collar job that applies. So it could be a human asking an AI to do that, or your agent asking an AI to do that. So that has implications. So I'm feeling 2 years until we see that technology. I just don't know how long it'll take to be fed into all these businesses to be able to make use of that technology. So I just wanted to give those 2 points of it because I thought that was a very interesting 2 things that I saw. And as we know, GPT-6, 7, whatever that is, within 3, what was it? Sam Altman said within 5 years, AGI, kind of like that was his deal. Some people say till 2029. Apparently there's another guy who says we'll live forever after 2030. So, but we're all kind of in the 5, 7, 10 year range, which 5 years isn't 2 years will go by in a blink of an eye. 5 years will go by super quick too. So it's really about, hey, how do we prepare for it? You have good points, Brian. It's like, hey, how do we, as individuals,
mentally prepare?
How do we prepare? Yeah. It's funny because like there was something I heard of a couple months ago where the evolution of work has changed. Where it used to be you go to work, you go home, but work was separate. Work, you had your church group, you had your your bowling team, and these places are where your individuals, you have different selves. But now because work, you just said it, Eran, work is kind of wrapped up into our own identity, but it never used to be. Work was for a specific thing, and then you went home and you did something else. I'm sorry to pick on you, Andy, but I would say because you're retired, have you seen that evolution of work from work was kind of not tied to who you are. It's just something you did, just like you did bowling, just like you did baseball, just like you did going out, going to church, going to whatever religious function you went to. It wasn't your identity, but now for a lot of people it is.
Well, I think all humans have a need to feel that they're a productive contributor to their family, to their society, etc. And so that has been measured by the income that I can generate from developing skills or capabilities that have caused people to pay me money to work with them. So if that goes away and you're no longer being provided anything as a result of your unique value that you've developed over time, that has mental health implications. And I agree with Brian on that front. And I think that, when you ask, have I seen a transition from a time when, work was separate and I had other occupations or engrossments that took my attention when I was away from work? That wasn't my life experience. My life experience was that I was always thinking, working. I might have, tuned out for a while to watch a television show, but for the rest of the time, I was either working on what I was being paid by someone else to do, or I was working on ideas for what I wanted to build myself to generate income and become productive for my family and my future. So one of the things I'll add to your comments, Karl, is think about now what your ideas and recommendations would be for your next generations. So my children are in their 30s in some cases, and in the late 20s in others. They're having a very different forward-looking experience of life that is diminished compared to what the opportunity and potential was that I experienced at their respective ages. And they're all well employed and they're doing fine, but things are changing, and the horizon for their, retirement, if you will, is very, very different. And now, what about my grandchildren? What are the prospects for them, and what would I think would be applicable as a guiding light for them to achieve a fulfilling and productive life? And it doesn't look like work, because work's going to be substantially replaced. Go ahead, Beth.
So filling and productive is doing a lot of work in that sentence, because it isn't actually money that gives our sense of self. It's meaning. Money is the conduit, right? Like, I am able to support my family because of the money that I receive. The meaning that I get my identity from is my role in my family. And I would say that that Jyunmi and I, and I know that everybody else does things, but like nobody gets into performing improv or teaching improv because they think that will contribute monetarily to anyone at all ever. Though you should totally reach out to support.
Well,
Yeah.
It's
He's a
great
case, by the way, for why it is so important. But keep going. Yeah.
It's great training, but and you should totally come. Improv is a great way to get people to engage in AI in a non-threatening way. But it creates a lot of meaning when you watch people move through the fear of being observed, making something up that is interesting, entertaining. People come and do that kind of thing. Jyunmi, I think you do a bunch of other things in that way too. So this is a little bit more of the shift toward what is meaningful, what gives your life meaning.
I want to jump in there because one thing I want to mention is, ever since we've been taught everything we went to school for, we went to, whoever went to college, university, trade school, whatever, our whole purpose in life is to do something. And for a lot of us, to get a job, go do a career, to do something. I think a lot of that is going to be turned on its head. Because if you think about it, and again, we're gonna quick, what is this, a preview of what we talked about with Marcus Sheridan in the interview series that we did, was that we can take AI and ask it to teach us anything. We no longer, yes, you still need to go to school for other things, but but we can now have this personal tutor that can, if it can't teach us everything, it can teach us a lot of things about a lot of different topics, from beginner to intermediate to even advanced, if we actually took the time to do it. So what does that mean for people going through, quote unquote, the system from elementary school to high school to college to get your degree to get a job? That's kind of like the path that there's a lot of people that think that's the path to go to, hence all the competition to get into college, because if you go to the best colleges, you get the best jobs. What we've just said is, wait a minute, those best jobs, what if in 2, 3, 5 years, those AIs are like, well, we can do it way better, faster than you, more efficiently, more productively than you. So I think that's the question. But we all go back then, how do we train? Like, that has to be a shift in how we educate everybody. And what is that meaning? Because you've seen too many TikToks about, like you were saying, Andy, your kids, grandkids, they're feeling a little disillusioned by what the ideal path in life is, because the benefit isn't as what it was a decade, 2, 3 decades ago.
Yeah, I think we have to take a holistic view of AI and how it's going to impact society, right? We've talked about in the past, society's got to catch up with the technological changes. There's going to be this gap, things like that. But if we look at it as a whole, and this is somewhat inspired by Aschenbrenner's paper, is AI is equivalent to the agricultural revolution, right? So 10,000 years ago, humanity invents agriculture. And what does that provide? It moves humanity from hunting and gathering, being able and having to spend their entire day working to survive and live, to a point where now they have food security. Now they have the time to think up other ideas, be inventive, be creative. And that's where culture gets developed, right? From that point. I know it sounds a little hyperbolic, but I think we're in that similar situation where now we have to really look at ourselves and say, hey, what does it mean to be human? Can we now identify ourselves through our creativity and our works, as opposed to having to survive each day? And I think, like what Karl said, people are disillusioned because over the last few decades, that's what it feels like. It feels like we've had to just survive. For the vast majority of people, it's, I have to go to work and I have to do this thing and I have to be concerned with doing something not that I love, but that will pay the bills, that will take care of my family, and making those kinds of choices. I think we have an opportunity here to reassess all of those systems so that we can move forward and really enjoy our lives. And this technology has that capability. Suffice it to say, though, on the other side, it will be hugely disruptive. This will be a chaotic period for everyone. It's not going to be a clean transition. Expect major upheavals, right? Now, I think our purpose collectively here is to educate everyone as much as possible so we can change that 7% of daily use up to a higher percentage. And that, that attests to the amount of awareness. Because once people are aware of something, then they can take action. If they don't even know that it's happening, then they have no clue what they don't know, right? So I think awareness is the first step. Then with that awareness comes action, and then you can change. You can make whatever decisions collectively, what direction you want to go, right? And then from there, hopefully, we can move to a more stable, more utopian society at that point. I know it's kind of an out there subject to talk about, but what does it mean to be human? We now are going to be in a post-scarcity or a post-work type of world. What do we do?
Nico agrees with you. This is the fourth industrial revolution. It's a big change.
I agree with that as well. I was going to say, I love what you're saying, Jyunmi, and I'll say this really quick, and then whoever wants to wrap up. I know this is going to seem like a weird analogy, but when my mom was dealing with cancer, she passed away in 2008. It was her second round of cancer. But when it came back the second time, she was clear for 6 years. There was a long lead up, several months lead up to where we were aware, my mom was aware that modern medicine was not going to fix this, right? So the end was inevitable, and she knew it. And so my point to bring that up is that I always called it like micro cuts. Like I got like a million micro cuts, but because it was a lead up, and because I was having to deal with it on a day-to-day basis when my mom did in fact pass away. Not that it wasn't hard or whatever, but I was definitely more prepared for it. So I'd say that to say that when it comes to this, not to toot our own horn, we're certainly not the only, but one of the ways that you can best prepare for the future, in my opinion, is actually these micro cuts. And I don't mean that a negative way, but shows like this. The reason we do this, I get this experience out of doing this show, which is that when you talk about it more openly and honestly, when you have more conversations, it enables all of us to have thoughts in our head and go, what does that mean if my job was to go away in 5 years? What if what I do professionally is no longer necessary in X amount of years? What does that make me feel like? How do I adjust to that? Is there things I should start looking at today that would make a difference for me tomorrow, whatever that may be? And so it's really just exposure, right? And so by having this exposure and having these conversations, I think it really does go a long way for the people that are so inclined to be much more prepared. Eran said it at the top of the show. We don't have a crystal ball. So we don't know. We're guessing, right? We're giving our best educated guesses of how and when and what the timeline is. But we feel confident that these changes are coming, like you said, Jyunmi. And so we can all prepare, even if we don't actually know the answer or the actual timeline. Everybody can be prepared by sort of having this era of like AI literacy, which often you talk about it a lot, Beth, but which also could actually mean just being comfortable with the uncomfortable and thinking through these scenarios so that you're never really caught off guard in the future and you're able to maybe adjust yourself to it. At least that's how I see it. I don't know if any of you guys agree, but that's where I sort of look at this.
I think that maybe we didn't start out intending to do this with the podcast, but I do think the fact that we are 200 and something shows in, because we're talking about these 5 days a week, we're forced to become more immersed in it, educated in it, etc. And look, I admit that I haven't been available a lot because of the time zone interest this year, but it's definitely helped me, and I'm sure it's helped everyone else get more. You're talking about those little microcuts, Brian. It's definitely helping us go through that process sooner rather than later, and then being able to share that experience with people that are watching us or listening to us. And it could be live online like Nika or Jen is, or it could be somebody who listens to us in 6 months from now. So hopefully, without intending to, we're kind of maybe smoothing the path or laying the path for people to sort of get familiar with the changes that are coming, rather than just have it all go bang in your face. It was a complete shock, and suddenly your life is turned to hell in a handbasket. So, look, I hope that we can contribute to something in that respect over time.
Well, on that thought, we're not going anywhere. We intend to keep showing up 5 days a week and giving you our best thoughts, bringing our minds together and just tell you how we're thinking about this. We don't intend to be or think that we're right. We will often get this stuff wrong. We'll adjust as we go. But what we can tell you is that we'll continue to have open and honest conversations about it and how it's affecting us and the people around us. So hopefully that's helpful to you. You can always go to thedailyAIshow.com. If you want to go back and look at any of us. Maybe this is the first time you're ever listening to the show. If you are, welcome. If you're a subscriber, thank you so much. But hey, look, as Eran said, there's 230 other topics for you to dive into if you want to take this journey with us. And of course, you can find us 5 days a week. We also just put out our third issue of our newsletter. It went out on Sunday. It's getting amazing open rates. So thank you to anybody who signed up for our newsletter. That just tells us that hopefully we're moving in the right direction. Lots of stuff in that newsletter that you just simply cannot get on our live shows. That's why we decided to do it. So you can go check that out and sign up for it if you'd like at thedailyAIshow.com. We will be back the rest of this week with all sorts of new and interesting topics. So keep on coming back. And with that, we'll say goodbye for today. Thanks, everybody. Fun conversation. Let's do it again.
See ya.
Aloha.